everything in this business should be measured, driven by data, and process should be plug and play. There should not be anything in this business where if one element collapses, it cannot be easily replaced, right?
What's up, Powder Keg fans? I'm your host, Matt Hunkler, and this is episode 88 of Powder Keg Igniting Startups, the show for entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators building remarkable tech companies in areas decidedly outside of Silicon Valley. Today, we're talking all about marketplaces, and I sat down with my friend Robert Preville, who is a serial entrepreneur and a total expert on marketplaces, the business model, the scale points, and just the sheer power of leveraging marketplaces. So whether your business has a primary value creator of a marketplace or you're looking for a way to scale value, we're going to talk about that in today's episode. Robert shared some pretty interesting stories, including selling his first marketplace business to Jeff Bezos back in the day. So of course we dive into some of the lessons learned there. Robert is from Wilmington, North Carolina, and he's the founder and CEO of KWIPPED, which is a B2B marketplace that matches businesses who need to rent equipment with a global network of rental suppliers. In this episode, you're going to learn how to choose the right model to succeed in the marketplace world, as well as some of the core challenges of starting out and how companies can win long-term with a marketplace model. Hey, Robert, thanks so much for taking time today to be a part of the Powder Keg podcast. It's been a long time since we connected, but you have been up to some amazing things. For those who don't know, would you mind maybe giving us the quick high level of what KWIPPED is?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the Powder Keg podcast. You have built an amazing platform yourself. So KWIPPED is a B2B marketplace and platform for equipment rentals and leasing. Simply put, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but this is an easy analogy to understand. We are Airbnb for equipment rentals, and we are LendingTree for equipment leasing.
And can you kind of give me some sense of like size and scale, whether that's revenue, number of customers, number of employees?
Yeah, absolutely. So we span about 30 different industry verticals, ranging from lab and medical equipment to construction, engineering, audiovisual, and food service. We have had approximately 15,000 organizations, large and small, use our platform to either source or secure equipment. Organizations like Apple, Coca-Cola, General Dynamics, Lockheed, Boeing, governments, municipalities. It's a wide range of organizations that use the platform. We have about 1,100 suppliers, which are primarily manufacturers and distributors on the marketplace, and we estimate there to be about $200 million worth of equipment available through KWIPPED.
I'm so excited about the traction that you guys have built. I mean, not just traction, but momentum. Because when we first met, you guys had traction. When you presented on the Powder Keg stage years ago, I think we were in Raleigh, but you guys are based in Wilmington. Is that correct?
That's correct. Wilmington, North Carolina.
Nice. Well, I definitely want to get into why Wilmington, North Carolina, and how you started KWIPPED. But first, I'd love to just hear a little bit about your own personal backstory. I know every entrepreneur has an interesting origin story. So could you maybe give me some insight into what your first entrepreneurial memory is?
Gosh, I remember being maybe 7 or 8 years old and going to a restaurant to eat with my parents, and the owner of the restaurant came out and he was greeting people that were eating there. And I remember saying to myself, I want to be that guy.
What was it about that guy?
Well, 20 years later, I decided there's no way I ever wanted to get into the restaurant business or own a restaurant. But I don't know. I think there's just, I was always attracted to a certain sense of freedom that came with entrepreneurship, and the creativity, it's sort of an expression of yourself, an expression of creativity that I was not able to find in working for another organization.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And so was that something that was sort of like a seed that was planted for you when you were 7, 8 years old and you kind of carried it with you and nurtured it? Or was it like you went home and started your own lemonade stand?
I think there was a seed there, but entrepreneurship back in the early to mid 90s wasn't called entrepreneurship. That wasn't really a buzzword back then. So, we were groomed to go to school and get a good job and do what our parents did. So that's sort of the path that I went down. However, I did start a company in college. I started a web developing company. Back then it was sort of innovative. Now, not so much.
I did the same in college, actually. How did you come across the idea?
So I went to school for engineering, and I lived in a dorm where they combined engineering students with computer science students, and I met some guys, and they sort of got me involved in computers. And I remember building a website for my friends were in a band, and they'd signed a label in Germany, and they were touring Europe, and I built this website for their band, and people were like emailing me from Germany. And, at the time that was like, it was weird. It was weird to I didn't know anybody outside my hometown. Now I got people from Germany wanting to know information about my friends and where they were playing and what they were doing. So it just that was a very exciting time to be part of, the sort of the birth of the internet and the World Wide Web. And it was you're opening up the world in a way that was not ever done before.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. What was it about software development that kind of attracted you into that profession?
I'm not sure it was the idea of software development that got me excited. It was the building websites then and still now. It's more like being in the publishing business. It's creating content or applications or platforms, whatever it may be, but executing it in a way not unfamiliar to old school publishers, where you're getting your message out to the world, and you have that access in a way that only organizations with a lot of money and resources had prior. So that's sort of what got me excited about it. And we started the web development company in college, and we sold to our clients were commercial companies. We were building their first website, which I think at the time they were early adopters. And they let us sort of do it. And I thought we did a pretty good job of it. But that actually led into, that was sort of the baseline for my career path there on out. I went to mechanical engineering, and I haven't ever done any mechanical engineering.
Well, how did you kind of navigate that? I mean, your first company in college here doing software development, what kind of hard lessons did you have to learn along the way?
Well, so lesson number one is it's really hard to operate a company or sell a product or service while you're taking 21 credits a semester. So it was a part-time gig, which the lesson was, unless you're willing to focus on something, you're not going to be successful at it. So I was successful at graduating college because that's where my focus was at the time. After graduation, I did actually spend maybe 6 months working out of my parents' basement to try to get that company going. I had 3 other business partners. They all got jobs, and I said, well, I'm going to try to get our business going full time. And quickly realized I probably need to go get a job to get out of this basement, make some money, and get some experience.
What was that job?
So my first job was working for a engineering software firm that made CAD/CAM software, like solid modeling. And you ever see that TV show, How It's Made?
Yeah.
So my job was to go around to all these manufacturing facilities and demo our software, spend like a day or two learning how they make their things. Like I got to see how Solo cups were made, how F-15 fighter planes were made, how Philip Morris made cigarettes, right? So I'd go in there, I'd spend a day, I'd demo our software, and then that was my job. So
wow!
Being on that show, How It's Made, it was pretty cool.
So was it sales?
It was. I was an application engineer, and I was working with our reseller channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So the first big experience for me was we recruited a reseller out of Atlanta. And at that time, I'd sort of been thinking about this idea, business idea related to what we were doing. I had this idea of building a engineering marketplace where people can download these CAD files that our software created.
Yeah.
And then we would build in purchasing data into those files. So if you downloaded a cap screw from our library, you pretty much locked in who you're going to buy that cap screw from, right? And
that's brilliant. What year was this?
This was 1999.
Wow. Ahead of your time, man.
Yeah.
You and Bezos.
So we were basically connecting. The whole idea behind that marketplace concept was connecting engineers that were designing stuff and sourcing or specifying components with the manufacturers that made that stuff.
Sure.
So we recruited this reseller out of Atlanta, and he had a similar idea. His idea was a little bit different, but it was to create a marketplace where those that needed custom-made components, engineers would design stuff, but then they would outsource the manufacturing to machine shops and job shops. So he built a little platform, which was really nothing more than forms, online forms, where you specify what you need, and then that form kind of got emailed out to suppliers that he knew, manufacturers that he knew that could make it. And the business was called Manufacturing Quote, or MFG.
And you had your minimum viable product.
We had, so he was a little older, so he had the experience and understood the process. And I said, hey, I started a web developing company in college, and I got 3 guys up north that can actually build an application, not just have this sort of email exchange, right?
Right.
So I went back home to up north, and I spec'd it out, and I have this like product specification that I created, and I went back down there 3 months later, and I said, this is what we need. And for this, for a nominal amount of money, I can get this built for you. And he said, that's great. And so I went back up, I got my 3 guys, and I said, let's build this, and we were all young, just out of college. So we weren't really thinking about getting paid. We were more thinking about getting a job with stock options and, benefiting from the upside potential success.
Right.
We built this, and it then landed us a strategic investor in Thomas Publishing Company out of New York. So if anybody, I'm showing my age whenever I talk about these guys, but if you remember the Thomas Register, American manufacturers, now thomasnet.com, they were our early investor. And then fast forward 4 years, we sold half that business to Jeff Bezos.
Nice.
So it was a fun ride and exciting. And then
well, fill me on in a couple details there, because so many pivotal moments, I'm sure, in this journey, and just a couple that I picked up on is, first of all, finding this guy out of Atlanta who helped hack together sort of your minimum viable product. How did you find that person? You said you kind of recruited them. How did you find them? And then how did you convince them to hack this first version together? Yeah.
So my job at that company was to manage a reseller channel. And there were companies that were reselling our software. And in that space, typically the companies would resell engineering software and manufacturing software. So on one side, they had engineering customers, and the other side, they had manufacturing customers. So between his 2 customer segments, he already had the sort of the foundation of a marketplace, or at least the participants, right?
And that's one of the most challenging pieces of a marketplace business, right?
There's a lot of challenging pieces, but there's certainly that very early chicken and the egg sort of, challenge that you have to solve, right?
Yep.
And he kind of did it sort of manually, right? And engineering customers would say, hey, I need to get this made. Do you know anybody in town that can do it? And he'd give them 3 phone numbers, or the manufacturing customers would say, hey, I'm looking for some business. Do you know anybody that needs anything made?
Right.
This is sort of doing that manually, right? And then I think, when the early web developing experience, I think we demonstrated a knowledge base that he knew he needed, that we had, and we were young and eager, and he took advantage of that and got us for cheap, and we picked up our lives and moved down to Atlanta to do this.
Wow. That's awesome. And so then another big pivotal moment sounds like getting connected with Jeff Bezos. Do you have any more insight into how that all came about?
So it was interesting. At that time, we had a term sheet that was signed to be acquired by a company called Dassault. Dassault is one of the larger software vendors of engineering software.
Okay.
And have you heard of Blue Origin?
Sure.
So Blue Origin is Jeff Bezos' private space race company, right? They're building.
Yeah, I was actually just down on the Space Coast with Steve Case and the Rise of the Rest crew, checking out some of those facilities.
So back in early 2000s, like 2004, Blue Origin engineers were using our platform to source manufacturers. They were designing these things and they had to get them made, right?
Yeah.
So Bezos happened to be at Blue Origin one day, was talking to these engineers, and they were showing them how they were finding manufacturers to have parts made. And he called our CEO.
Wow.
He said, I see what you guys are doing. I'm pretty excited about this. Our CEO said, it's kind of crazy. Appreciate you calling, but we've signed a term sheet to be acquired. He said, rip it up. I'll front the legal expense and I'll make it worth your while. So that's what he did.
Wow. Wow. The rest is history.
The rest is history.
Cool. So that was your first marketplace that you were involved with, right?
That's right.
And what was the next step after that? So that company gets acquired. What's next step for you? What are you thinking in all of this process?
So I exited the opportunity about that point in time. I was the first employee, employee number one. I call myself a founding employee, not necessarily a founder.
Yep. And did you walk away with something that you felt was worth your while?
Yeah, I got paid. So that was good.
That's good.
But more importantly, there were a lot of lessons learned. Most of the lessons were lessons of what not to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Could you share maybe one or two of those so that I don't make them?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is within the context of running a marketplace business. MFG was a subscription-based revenue model. We charge suppliers a fee to participate in our marketplace. In practicality in markets, specifically capitalistic markets, 80% of the business is going to go to 20% of the suppliers. It's just sort of Pareto's law. It holds true. 20% of the market has figured out how to be competitive, how to offer good quality, good pricing, be responsive, do everything that's required to attract the business, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately what happens is 80% of the suppliers are not getting business and therefore do not find value in participating in a marketplace and tend to blame everybody but themselves on why they're not getting the business. So
yeah.
So it becomes challenging, right? It's challenging to grow a marketplace. We had very high churn on the supply side. And I would equate that primarily to how our revenue structure, worked.
Okay.
So we said early on with KWIPPED as a marketplace, while you can turn on cash a lot quicker with a subscription model.
Yep.
You don't have the longevity there. So we said early on, we're going to be a transaction-based model. It's performance-based. We get paid when our suppliers get paid, and that keeps everybody happy.
Mm.
And that was probably the biggest lesson learned at running the manufacturing earlier marketplace.
Go for more of the transactional fee model as opposed to membership or subscription.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's so hard to control the value proposition or provide consistency. You can control it, but it's hard to provide consistency to it because everybody gets something different out of it, right? They're going to get as much out of the marketplace as they put in.
Yep.
And there's certain things that the marketplace simply can't control. If your material costs are 10 times higher than your competitors, there's nothing the marketplace can do about that. You're simply not competitive. You have to re-engineer some back-end processes within your business,
right?
Not just to be competitive on my marketplace, but to be competitive anywhere.
Right.
The performance-based model just keeps the incentives aligned between the administrators of the marketplace and those that are participating in it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you seen any other marketplaces out there? I'm sure you study the model quite a bit. Have you seen marketplaces buck that trend successfully with a subscription?
I think there's sort of two hybrid models. One model is a marketplace that balances being a marketplace and providing software features, right? So an example of that may be OpenTable.
Yep.
OpenTable actually, I believe, started as a software company where they built a reservation platform for restaurants. They had all these people using the reservation platform. They said, holy cow, let's make a marketplace.
Yeah.
So on one side, it costs, you're paying for the value of the features. On the other side, you're paying for the value of getting customers that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten.
Right.
So that's one. I think the second version of the hybrid model is transaction fee-based marketplaces that allow you to differentiate yourself through additional, either subscriptions or paying to differentiate yourself. So like eBay, right?
Yeah.
eBay may charge, say, 15% transaction fees in a particular product category. But if you want a picture, you're paying 35 cents more. If you want a bold listing, you're paying $1 more. If you want to be in the top of the page, you're paying X amount more.
Yeah.
So that makes sense to me too, right? In a capitalistic market, everyone, there's a even playing field, but the bigger and better companies have the resources to differentiate themselves in the way that the smaller companies simply can't. And I think, in capitalism, in capitalistic countries, that's fine, right? That's all about.
Well, I appreciate you sharing those examples. It really brings the model to life. And I think in some ways, it's interesting to think about that 80%, right? You mentioned Pareto's law that 20% get 80% of the value off of a marketplace. How do you then engage with the other 80%? Or is it more like you kind of deprioritize those 80% because you know that they're not going to put in what's necessary to get more value?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing is that there's another sort of big difference between what we did in Atlanta and what we're doing here at KWIPPED. Atlanta was essentially, there's sort of this terminology out there, homogeneous versus heterogeneous.
Okay.
So homogeneous marketplace, which is what we were building in Atlanta, is a marketplace whereby every unit of supply is essentially the same. So think Uber. Every Uber ride is essentially, you have a different car, different driver, but the actual, what is being provided is the same service, driving you from point A to point B. You don't care who your Uber rider is as long as he shows up and gets you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Airbnb is a heterogeneous marketplace. Every unit of supply is distinctly different. You do care which Airbnb you choose to secure when you go visit someplace, right?
Yep.
So KWIPPED is very heterogeneous. Our equipment solves very specific problems, and very specific configurations of the equipment solve those problems. So you can't just use anything.
Right.
In our marketplace, the 80-20 rule, it's a lot more granular. Maybe this, but it's very granular for each individual product category, and we have 20,000 different products on the website, right?
Yep.
In the other world, I don't know what the answer is, because when everybody's supplying the same exact thing, ultimately it becomes commodity driven, and usually in that environment, price wins out.
Right.
Even though everyone says, well, we have quality, we have customer service, we do this, we do that. At the end of the day, there's too many people doing the exact same thing, and it becomes sort of commoditized. So, but in deciding on building another marketplace, we were sure to choose an idea that was not a commoditized idea.
Yep. And so in that scenario, do you find that the Pareto principle still carries over even in the heterogeneous?
For certain product categories, but there's different challenges with heterogeneous marketplaces.
Yeah.
The challenge is it's a lot harder to obtain critical mass and liquidity. It's a lot harder for transactions to actually be executed. If you think about Airbnb, if I have only 3 Airbnb hosts in a given city, it's going to be very difficult to make a match.
Right.
If I have 3,000, it's going to be a lot easier because there's a lot more options.
Yep.
Uber can get away with 3 drivers. If you got 3 riders and you got 3 drivers, then it doesn't matter. Transactions are going to happen.
Yeah, you've got a marketplace.
Yeah. Now, the flip side is Airbnb has a much more defensible model than Uber. It's very difficult to do what they've done. It's very difficult to create what KWIPPED has built. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of supplier aggregation in order to do that.
Yeah.
I think with Uber, it's defensible, but Airbnb, think about Airbnb as competitors. They have VRBO and Airbnb. There's a lot of Uber competitors out there. And guess what? All the drivers, the Uber driver that you ride with is probably driving for Lyft as well. And maybe a taxi driver on the side, right?
Yep.
The supply is the same, and they're just getting rides off of different platforms.
Totally.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
That's very interesting. So tell me a little bit about the genesis of KWIPPED. When did you first have the idea, and what was What was the sort of like aha moment for you?
Yeah. So after I exited from the manufacturing marketplace, I started another company, not quite as sexy, called Global Test Supply. We're a distributor of engineering equipment.
Okay.
Buy low, sell high model, nothing fancy, but except that we went to market digitally online, and that's where our expertise lied.
Nice.
While at Global, customers came up to us and they said, you guys sell this rather expensive equipment. We have a sort of short-term need for it. Would you be willing to rent it to us? And being opportunistic, I said, sure, why not, right? And quickly I realized how lucrative the equipment rental business could be. And we built up this rather sizable inventory of equipment, rented out, and it became a very significant portion of our business. I sold that business back in 2011 to a Canadian company, and then the thought occurred to me. I said, there's got to be a lot of global test supplies out there servicing sort of these niche equipment rental or specialty equipment rental demand, right? You think about equipment rental, we always think about construction. You're thinking about excavators and scissor lifts and United Rentals and Sunbelt and Herc, but you're not thinking about medical equipment, laboratory equipment, engineering equipment, food service equipment, audio visual. Every industry has a equipment rental component to it. So our thesis was, a marketplace like MFG could serve the equipment rental industry very well, and there was nobody doing it. And we scrapped together a website, scoped it out, put a plan together, launched it. That was about a 3-month journey, and then almost immediately validated our assumption structure.
And what did validation look like there for that first version?
I don't think I've ever been involved in a business where every single person, ranging from those that have deep domain expertise on what you're doing to those that have no idea of what you're doing, every single person says, this is a fantastic idea, right? Customers were saying, this is great. Suppliers were saying, this is great. Investors were saying, this was great. People that knew nothing about what we were doing saying, it sounds great, right? So there's a lot of anecdotal validation early on. And then real validation came in the form of the data. We started doing transactions.
Yeah.
Our customers were happy. We had repeat customers. We have suppliers that have been with us since day one. We're driving hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business to suppliers. And then you start hearing things like, supplier last week said, I get business from two sources, word of mouth and KWIPPED. People have said, KWIPPED is great. It pays for my warehouse guy. Or, I've grown my business, my rental business, 200% just by being on KWIPPED, right? So you get a lot of anecdote, which is really what feeds the emotion.
Yeah.
And the data drives the decisions, right?
That's awesome, man. What have been the biggest breakthroughs? What were some of the bigger breakthroughs early on with KWIPPED? Even though you're getting early validation early on, I've been around enough startups to know that it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows and up and to the right. What were some of the challenges that you hit? Well,
so a business model like ours, it cannot be done organically. There's capitalization required here, and we had to go out and secure that. I think 20 years of experience and a little bit of gray hair goes a long way in securing.
I think I may have more than you at this point.
Yeah. Investors are making bets on the people. I think a bad idea, well executed, is going to pay off a lot more than a great idea, poorly executed, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think in recruiting investment, you have to be just as careful about choosing your investors as they are about choosing you.
Sure.
And being pragmatic, being optimistic, but balancing that out with being pragmatic and making sure everyone understands the risk involved. I think that's key. I think we've done a good job at that. We were very cautious not to take money from somebody that I didn't think could lose that money.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really great. Did you take it mostly out to your own personal network and high net worth individuals?
We did initially. We probably raised, I had an individual who had invested in my prior company. When it sold, he got paid. So
those are always good people to start with.
That was a great person to start with.
Yeah.
That was the person I could, give him a napkin idea, and he had trust in me to execute. So that was very, very early on. We raised $100,000 from one person.
Yeah.
That afforded us the ability to hire 2 employees.
Yep.
But then we reached out to our local network, and we probably raised another maybe a couple $100,000. But then beyond that, I had to get serious about fundraising.
Yep.
And that's probably about the time you and I met. I started reaching out to organizations like Powder Keg, 1 Million Cups. And then those organizations helped me find out, identify, and get introduced to the investor networks. So the majority of our money raised has come from angel networks. There's a group out of the Southeast called Venture South, and then we raised a bunch of money from the Wolfpack Investor Network out of NC State. And then we landed our first institutional investor just this past year.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome, man.
So we talk to VCs all the time now. I mean, we're no doubt we're on the radar. We're trying to get the business to a point where it makes sense for everybody to take it to the next level.
That's exciting, man. And growing your team there in Wilmington, can you tell me a little bit about the culture of Wilmington and why you chose to have your headquarters there?
Yeah. So this is the biggest lesson learned, primarily from the Atlanta experience with the manufacturing marketplace. I worked for a guy who was very entrepreneurial, but I'll say he was a bit Donald Trump-esque. He did not exactly create a working environment that was stress-free, and there's a lot of unnecessary internal friction within that culture. I worked with some of the smartest guys that I've ever met there, but we could have done so much more with the right leadership in place. So I said, early on, I said, no matter what I do, if I don't go to work and have fun every day, I'm simply not going to do it.
That's great.
And I was fortunate to learn at a very young age. When I exited that opportunity, I could have stayed. And if I stayed, I probably would have cashed out 10x more than I did. But I went through that sort of psychological decision early on in life to understand that life's really not about money. There's no amount of money that's going to buy happiness. And that's a very true statement. I know it's easy to say that once you have money, but it's very true. So I said, the Quip culture is going to be about having fun. It's going to be about coming to work, loving what you do, loving who you're doing it with, not having a whole lot of tolerance for anyone that's going to try to disrupt that flow. And Wilmington, a lot of people, if you've never been to Wilmington, this is the greatest place, one of the greatest places in the country to live, right? And people move here because of lifestyle. There's a lot. We live on the ocean. We have this beautiful downtown and culture, and weather's great, and there's so much to do here. People move here for the lifestyle. So, the culture at Quipped is we are working to live, not living to work.
Yeah.
And we have fun. And if you're not having fun, that's a good reason to come into the CEO's office and gripe.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So, and it turns out if you get a whole bunch of people in a room and they're having a lot of fun every day and they really like each other, guess what? They do amazing things.
Absolutely. Well, talk to me a little bit about how you grow that team. What's the talent acquisition model for you in a place like Wilmington?
Well, we interview about 100 people and we choose 1 or 2. I say that jokingly, but it's probably not far from the truth. I mean, we are highly, at least, we're at 15 employees right now. The first, say, 30 employees you hire, those are probably the most critical decisions you're going to make in your business, because those employees are the ones that are going to effectuate your culture and ultimately make future hiring decisions. And if they're not making the same cultural decisions that you are as leadership, then you're going to be in for trouble later on down the road. So we're very careful, and we put them through, we want to get to know people. And we kind of want to get to know them over a period of time. we're big on, we like, or I appreciate referrals from other employees, but I've said this for a long time. I said, I don't mind to hire somebody as long as you don't have a problem firing them if they don't work out.
Yeah.
And that gets people thinking about whether or not they're the right fit, right?
I like it. Do you have any other go-to interview questions?
We just, outside of skill set questions, we want to know what drives people. What do you do for fun? What motivates you? What doesn't, what rubs you the wrong way? Tell me about, what are your personal goals? Are your personal goals going to be aligned with what our business goals are? Right. We look for the talent, knowing that we can train the skill set. Right. I mean, skill sets are easy to develop. Talents are not. And you can't, you can take somebody that went to accounting school or has a master's in accounting, but if they don't have the ability to pay attention to detail, no matter how much schooling they have, they're never going to be a good accountant. And there's nothing you can do about that. Right.
Yeah.
So you don't want to hire any dyslexic accountants.
Probably not. You have any advice for people who might be interviewing at a startup or considering working at a startup?
Well, I think our society and culture has always viewed certain things as one way. So, the employee-employer relationship was always viewed as a one-way relationship where the employer was, sort of the in charge of that relationship or steered it, right?
Yeah.
Entrepreneur investor is always perceived that the investor is really the one in charge of that. I think it's important that anybody working, that's interviewing for a job has to make sure that the company is a right fit for them. And I can tell when people are thinking that way because they come in loaded up with questions about what's this experience going to be like for me, and is it going to align with what I'm looking for personally, what I'm looking for culturally, right? The people that come in and are, only answering what's asked of them, they have no interest in making sure this is a right fit for them.
Right.
Same thing with investors. I talk to VCs all the time, and usually, historically those conversations are VC asks investor an entrepreneur question. And there's not a whole lot of the entrepreneur asking the VC a question. I have a whole slew of, questions that I want to know about the VC firm. What's motivating them, who their LPs are, what ratios are they being held accountable to, what's their tolerance for risk, what are they going to do when, things don't go the right way, what are their experiences, what are their backgrounds? Because at the end of the day, if you're not a good fit for us, we're not going to be a good fit for you.
Sure. That's really good advice. And I appreciate you sharing that from both perspectives, both from the potential employee standpoint, but also the potential investee potential. It's a really good perspective to take when looking at any sort of partnership at any level.
I think Steve Jobs, I'm sure there's always a Steve Jobs quote in a good podcast, and I forget exactly what the quote is, but he basically said something magical happens when you turn 40 and you stop giving a shit about other people's perceptions. And that doesn't mean you don't do what's right, but your 20s is all about impressing people so you can build a foundation for your career. And then the 30s is about proving yourself. The 40s it's about having fun. Just like take everything that you've done for the last 2 decades and leverage that, do it right, and do it in a way that makes you, that satisfies you. Right.
I love that. Yeah. That's great. Well, what are you most excited about right now? Where are you having the most fun at KWIPPED?
Well, I think what I'm most excited about is, we are in a stage that I've not personally been at prior, and that is we are in scale mode. We are scaling this business. I've been in the creative upstart mode. I've been in the proof of concept mode. I've been in early success mode. We are now in this works. We know this works. We know this is a big opportunity. We got the right people in place. We got some money in the bank. Let's make it happen. And that's fun. That's exciting.
Have there been some hard lessons in that transition from startup mode to scale up mode?
There are definitely lessons, but once again, like I said, once you turn 40, you don't pursue it hard anymore, because that's not what your take on life is, right?
Yeah. Any mindset shifts that you've kind of learned? I would imagine, because I'm in the same boat. I've either joined at a scale up, or most of my career has been in startup mode.
Yeah.
And so making that transition, I feel like it would be very hard to turn off the, like, okay, what else are we going to launch? And what else are we going to create?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The biggest mind shift change for me is I have to start thinking outside of creation mode and more operationally. And I actually brought a strategic person in place to help me with that, because that's not something that's not a strength of mine. I'm very anecdotal, and let's create an idea, let's throw it out there, let's test it, let's try it, let's see if it works, let's evolve it. We now have an individual here who's very analytical, focused on the data. Data drives decisions. There's frameworks for decision making. Everything in this business should be measured, driven by data, and process should be plug and play. There should not be anything in this business where if one element collapses, it cannot be easily replaced, right?
Yeah.
So he's helping us really write our recipe and then just bake over and over again. I mean, that's what scale is. Here's a process, it works, it's driven by these datas and these frameworks, and you just keep doing it over and over and over again.
I like the recipe metaphor. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, for people that want to learn more about KWIPPED, refer someone who might need to rent equipment, or refer someone that might want to join the team as you guys continue to scale, and join you there on the coast in North Carolina. Where should they look you up? What's a good place to go?
KWIPPED.com, KWIPPED. That's awesome. A good starting point. We're a very, at the moment, we're a very accessible organization. So our contact information's on the site. But you can follow us on social media.
Where are you most active personally? Are you on LinkedIn or Twitter or Snapchat? I'm
on LinkedIn. I'll say that I'm not overly, I am most active personally in my office, dealing with my 15 people every day.
You've got a business to run. I totally get it.
So that's what I do.
Cool.
I would invite anybody, no matter who you are, if you have an interest in learning more or have questions, to reach out, because there was a point in my life where I felt like certain people were unapproachable, and I told myself I'd never want to be one of those people.
Well, I don't, for what it's worth, I don't think you're one of those people. It's been really great to follow along the last couple of years as you guys have scaled. And I love that you guys are just on a tear right now, scaling. And I really appreciate you sharing some of your own personal lessons, as well as some of the lessons you've learned in scaling marketplaces. This is almost like a little mini masterclass in marketplace models. So
yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And hopefully we have you back on the show soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Until then, man, thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you walk away feeling inspired and armed with a lot of insights about marketplace businesses and the model and strategies around that. You can find KWIPPED on Twitter. That's KWIPPED_com. So KWIPPED_com on Twitter, or go to KWIPPED.com to find out more. Now, if you're a professional in the tech space, PowderKeg can help you connect with a job you love. Hopefully you're already at one right now. But if you're interested in what's out there, you can join thousands of top professionals in the PowderKeg community to get connected with the hottest tech companies between the coasts. Visit PowderKeg.com to join the network and see what's out there. And to be among the first to hear the stories about entrepreneurs, investors, and other tech leaders outside of Silicon Valley, subscribe to us on iTunes at powderkeg.com/iTunes. And we'll catch you next time on PowderKeg Igniting Startups.